بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله ما بعد فإن أحسن الكلام كلام الله وخير الهدى هدى محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وإن شر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار. So today is lesson number 11 in the section on Al-Qadr, and it is lesson number 46 overall on the book Taqreeb or Tadmuriyyah. So just to recap where we are so far, we first of all spoke about Al-Qadr, which is Allah's prior knowledge of all things that are to happen, that have happened, that are to happen, and which includes the knowledge of His own actions and the knowledge of the actions of the servants. And that this knowledge has been written down in Al-Lawhul Mahfuz, which is the preserved tablet, before Allah brings it into existence. And then at the appointed time, Allah wills for it to occur, and He brings it into existence by way of His creative power. So these are the four levels of Al-Qadr: knowledge, writing, will, and creation, creative power. So we looked at the evidences for these levels of Al-Qadr in the Quran, and with these four levels we obtain the correct understanding of Al-Qadr, by which we are able to avoid any errors, any negligence, any extremism or exaggeration, by understanding these four levels and the evidences. After that, we then looked at another very important topic related to this, which is the issue of the ways and the means, the asbab, and how the ways and the means, meaning those things Allah has created within the creation which are means to other things. For example, water is a means for quenching thirst, fire is a means of heat and burning and light, and we can extend this to everything Allah has created, from the millions and millions, innumerable ways and means by which the creation functions. And all of this is part and parcel of Al-Qadr. It is from Al-Qadr, right? It is from Al-Qadr. And so resulting from this is the issue of taking the ways and the means. Do we take the ways and the means? Or do we just sit down and say, well, if Allah has decreed it, it's going to happen anyway, right? So we discussed this issue of taking the ways and the means, and we established that it is necessary to take the ways and means. You can't sit around hungry and then say, if Allah's willed for my hunger to be removed, it's going to happen anyway. No, you have to eat food, and you have to take water to have your thirst removed. You can't sit and say, well, if Allah's... Right? So we looked at that way of thinking, that reasoning, and showed how that is incorrect, that the ways and means are from Al-Qadr. We take the ways and means and we leave the outcome to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. After that discussion of the asbab, the ways and the means, and those people who negate the ways and means, and those people who exaggerate in the ways and means, from the atheist, the naturalist. So we looked at all that discussion. After that, we then looked at the necessity of believing in Al-Qadr on the one hand, and Ash-Shar', the legislation, on the other, right? So we believe in the creational, what Allah has created and what He has decreed on the one hand, and we also believe in the legislation on the other hand. Both of these go together. We looked at the necessity, why this is necessary. We gave 5 or 6 reasons why belief in Al-Qadr is necessary. It is from the pillars of Iman. It's the basis upon which we make tawakkul upon Allah. it makes us humble and not arrogant, in the sense that our achievements, they only occur because of what Allah has willed and created of the ways and means, right? So everything we do is simply from Allah's creation. So we can't be arrogant, and we can't be proud, and we can't look down upon other people. It also makes a person tranquil and at ease with everything that happens in his life, so he doesn't despair, right? So he has a strong character. So we looked at the necessity of belief in Al-Qadr. Likewise, we looked at the necessity of belief in the Sharia, the legislation. How it is the nature of man to have a will, have a desire, and to act upon that desire. And the aim of that is to repel harm from himself and attain benefit for himself. However, in doing so, he must have a guiding principle. He must have a criterion. And that criterion has to be outside of himself. This is because it is the nature of man to be hasty, to be ignorant, to be oppressive, to be inclined towards desires. And so therefore, although to some extent he knows what's harmful and beneficial for himself, in the absolute sense, this can only come from revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this proves that man needs a guiding principle and an absolute sense by which he knows everything which is harmful, everything which is beneficial. And this is where the Sharia, the law, the legislation comes. And so Allah Azza wa Jal sent prophets and messengers. With them he sent the law, like he did with Musa alayhi salam, the Torah, and with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Sharia. And this law is a law that is brings everything that is wholesome and good and halal, enjoins it, and prohibits everything that is filthy, vile, harmful, evil, and unlawful, haram. And so the guiding principle, therefore, is revelation. So this proved the necessity of belief in the Sharia, necessity of belief in Al-Qadr, necessity of belief in the Sharia, and they go together, they cannot be separated. Then, in the previous lesson, we, after laying this foundation of necessity in belief in Al-Qadr and necessity of belief in the Shar', in the legislation, we then looked at where do people stand when it comes to the issue of Al-Qadr, right? And we said there are basically four groups of people. The first group are those who are the people of truth. They believe in Al-Qadr and they believe in the Shar', the legislation of Allah. Right? So they believe in Al-Qadr and they act upon the legislation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Opposing them are three other groups. The first of those groups that we mentioned, they are the Majusiyah. These are the people who say that they believe in the Sharia, they believe you have to act upon the lawful and keep away from the unlawful. They believe in the Sharia, but what they say is that when it comes to man's actions and Al-Qadr, then man, he acts on his own, outside of Allah's power, outside of Allah's will. Why? Because they believe it is wrong and unjust for Allah to will and create your actions and then punish you for them or reward you for them, right? But this is falsehood, this is incorrect. This implies that there happens within Allah's creation what He has no control over and which is not under His will. Effectively, this means that man is a creator alongside Allah. Right? Allah is a creator and man is a creator of his own actions. This now resembles the saying of the Magians, the fire worshippers, the Persians, who believe in a God of good and a God of evil. Right? A God of light and a God of darkness. Right? It resembles that statement, which is why the Prophet ﷺ, when he prophesied this sect appearing in the Muslim nation, he said, he spoke about them, and he said they are the Magians of this Muslim nation. So this is the first group. This is where they made a mistake. They believe in the Sharia, but they reject Al-Qadr. Right? So they believe in the Sharia and reject Al-Qadr. Then we have the Mushrikiyah. The Mushrikiyah. They are those who try to justify their opposition to the Sharia by way of Al-Qadr. Right? So they say, well, if I'm committing shirk, and because Allah willed it, then how can my religion be wrong? Right? This is what the polytheists would say, right? We're committing shirk, we're worshipping idols. If what we're doing is wrong, why did Allah will it to happen then? Right? So they're assuming that whatever Allah wills, He must be pleased with it. And then they use it as an argument to say, well, our religion must be correct. Likewise, we see Muslims falling into this and saying, well, if Allah wanted me to be righteous, then He would have decreed upon me to be righteous. But He decreed upon me to sin and to drink alcohol and to gamble and to cheat and to steal and to, all the other things. But this is a false argument, right? So here, the person is believing in Al-Qadr and using it in order to oppose Ash-Shara', the legislation, right? And this also is false and futile, and we gave evidences of reason to from the Quran, the Sunnah, and reason to refute this. Anyhow, this is the second group, the Mushrikiyah. And the third group are the Iblisiyah, or it's like not necessarily a group, but like an approach or an attitude. So here what happens is that a contradiction is claimed, right? There's a contradiction between Al-Qadr and the legislation. And so Iblis, he basically said, he made the assumption that what he's made of the fire is superior to what Adam is made of clay. So upon that assumption that fire is better than clay, he then argued in front of Allah Azza wa Jal along the lines that, how can you ask me to prostrate to Adam by way of like legislation, command, when in terms of creation you made me, the fire, to be superior to Adam, which is clay? This now is a contradiction. How can the superior prostrate to the inferior? This is a contradiction between what you created and what you commanded, right? So this now is so here this is claiming there to be a contradiction in between the Sharia and Al-Qadr, and this is false, because there can never ever be any contradiction between the Sharia and Al-Qadr, because the Sharia itself is founded upon what Allah created. So everything the Sharia came with of commands and prohibitions is based upon the fundamental facts and realities of what Allah created, right? So everything that we see in the Sharia, it can never ever contradict what He created. So for example, just to give a quick example, Allah Azza wa Jal created certain substances and things like alcohol and things which intoxicate and things which harm. That's the property of these things. And then obviously He created them for a wisdom. And then the Sharia has come to prohibit those things, right? To prohibit those things because the harm is either overwhelming, is intrinsic, or the harm is greater than the benefit, right? And the Sharia always prohibits that which is intrinsically harmful and evil, or overwhelmingly harmful and evil, right? So there can never ever be anything in the Sharia where there's a contradiction between that and what Allah created. And so when Allah Azza wa Jal created Adam alayhi salam and ordered Iblis to prostrate to him, that prostration was a prostration of obedience to Allah and to submit to Allah Azza wa Jal. And as for his claim that he's somehow superior to Adam because he's made of fire, that was a faulty presumption on his behalf, and that is not correct. That's not actually correct, right? So this is the third group, the Iblisiyah. All of these three, you will see amongst mankind, amongst people, they will fall into these mistakes in relation to Al-Qadr and Ash-Shara', the legislation, the law. Right? Be they disbelievers, be they sinful Muslims or misguided Muslims like the Mu'tazila, you will see these attitudes and arguments coming at you in relation to this topic of Al-Qadr and Ash-Shara'. Now, so in the last lesson, we looked at the issue of al-qadar and how people deviate from it and the different orientations, right? So we're going to continue in today's lesson. And in today's lesson, we're going to talk about the shara', the legislation. We're going to expand a bit more about, okay, so we spoke about a shara', the legislation. What do we mean, the legislation? What is this legislation then, or what is the foundation of it? So today's lesson starts from this point then. The Shaykh says, rahimahullah, in the next section, وَأَمَّا الشَّرْعُ فَهُوَ مَا جَاءَتْ بِهِ الرُّسُلُ مِنْ عِبَادَةِ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى التي من أجلها خلق الله الجن والإنس لقوله تعالى وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. As for the legislation, right, it is whatever the messengers have come with, whatever they brought, of worshipping Allah the Exalted alone, which is the very purpose for which He created jinn and men, in accordance with His statement, the Exalted, and I did not create the jinn and men except that they may worship me. Right, this is a verse in the Quran. وَذَلِكَ هُوَ الْإِسْلَامُ الَّذِي لَا يَقْبَلُ اللَّهُ عَنْ أَحَدٍ دِينًا سِوَاهُ لِقَوْلِهِ تَعَالَى وَمَنْ يَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ. And this is the Islam which Allah does not accept from anyone besides this Islam, due to His statement, whoever follows other than Islam as a religion, never will it be accepted from him, in Surah Ali Imran 3 verse 85. Okay, so here in this passage, the Shaykh rahimahullah has explained to us that when we speak of the Sharia, where we spoke about al-qadar, we understand what al-qadar is: Allah's knowledge, the writing, His will, His creative power, all of the asbab He put in there. So we know what al-qadar is. As for ash-shara', the legislation, the law, then it is Islam. It is to single out Allah in worship, which is tawheed, which is what all the prophets, what all the messengers brought. And Allah Azza wa Jal will not accept any religion from anyone other than the religion of Islam, right? So when we are speaking about the necessity of al-qadar and the necessity of ash-shar', the legislation, we are speaking here about the Islam that was brought by all of the prophets and messengers in general, but more specifically the Islam brought by the Messenger Muhammad ﷺ, through which all other religions and revelations and scriptures were abrogated, right? So this is the Islam that is intended when we speak about the shar', the legislation. Then he goes on to explain exactly what is Islam. فَالْإِسْلَامُ هُوَ الْإِسْتِسْلَامُ لِلَّهِ وَحْدَهُ بِالطَّاعَةِ فِعْلًا لِلْمَأْمُورِ وَتَرْكًا لِلْمَحْذُورِ في كل زمان ومكان كانت الشريعة فيه قائمة وهذا هو الإسلام بالمعنى العام. Okay, so the general meaning of Islam, what does Islam mean? Islam means to inwardly and outwardly submit to Allah in obedience, right? To obey Allah inwardly and outwardly by doing what He commanded and abandoning what He prohibited. And this applies in every time and in every place in which a sharia, in which a legislation is present, right? And this is Islam with its general meaning, right? So what does this mean? This means that the sharia that we are speaking of is Islam, which simply means do what Allah commanded and keep away from what Allah prohibited, in any time and place where there is a prophet and he brought a message and he brought a legislation, right? This means that all previous prophets, all previous messengers, they were upon Islam, right? Their religion was Islam. Islam simply meaning do what Allah commanded, keep away from what He prohibited, on the foundation of worshipping Him alone. Worship Him alone, do not worship any others, do what He commanded, keep away from what He prohibited. This is the general, universal meaning of Islam, which is the religion of every single prophet. And so therefore, the follower of this religion and the follower of every previous prophet in his time, he is a Muslim. He's called a Muslim. That is his religion, right? And as the Shaykh says, وَعَلَى هَذَا يَكُونُ أَصْحَابُ الْمِلَلْ السَّابِقَةِ مُسْلِمِينَ حِينَ كَانَتْ شَرَائِعُهُمْ قَائِمَةٌ لَمْ تُنْسَخْ. Right? Upon this, it means that the people of all previous religions were Muslim. They were Muslim during the time that their Sharia has not been abrogated. So what this means, for example, is that everyone who was at the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was a Muslim. He's a Muslim. And everyone present at the time of Musa alayhi salam, following Musa alayhi salam and the law and so on and so forth, and the prophets who came afterwards upon the Torah, they are Muslim, right? Up until Allah sent Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him. And likewise, he was a Muslim. Anyone who followed him was a Muslim. Anyone who disbelieved in him was a disbeliever, not a Muslim, right? So in any time where there is a prophet and the Sharia and his followers, they are Muslims, so long as that what they are following has not been abrogated by the sending of another prophet or another book or revelation. Now, what are the evidences of this from the Quran? The Shaykh brings a handful of verses, numerous verses from the Quran, which explicitly mentions the word Muslim and Islam and Muslimin, to show that this was the actual religion of all the prophets and messengers. So by way of example, كما قال الله تعالى عن نوح وهو يخاطب قومه, he said from Nuh alayhi salam, the prophet Noah, who was saying to his people, فَإِن تَوَلَّيْتُمْ فَمَا سَأَلْتُكُم مِّنْ أَجْرٍ إِنْ أَجْرِيَ إِلَّا عَلَى اللَّهِ وَأُمِرْتُ أَنْ أَكُونَ مِنَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. Nuh said to his people, if you turn away from me, then I'm not asking you from any wages or any payment. My reward is only from Allah. And I have been commanded to be among the Muslims. Right? This is the actual statement of Nuh alayhi salam. Right? He was a Muslim, and the name Islam and Muslim was known because all the prophets and messengers from that area, obviously this is before the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, but the civilization in that time, they spoke what we know today, broadly speaking, which is Arabic or different dialects of Arabic, and all of the nations that were generally present, that we read in the history books where they mention all these names, the Chaldeans, the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, and so on and so forth, whatever. These are just names for Arabic speaking people who are speaking Arabic or a dialect of Arabic, Aramean, and things like that. And so this was their language, and Islam, Muslim, that was known to be the name of the religion of the prophets and messengers. So likewise we have Ibrahim alayhi salam. وقال عن إبراهيم ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. Abraham was not a Jew, nor was he a Christian, but he was Hanifan. He was upright, inclined towards that which is good and to the worship of Allah. And a Musliman, he was a Muslim. وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. And he was not of the polytheists. So Ibrahim alayhi salam, as it is said, he came from the direction of Iraq, towards where today we have Kuwait and Bahrain, in that region. And he was an Arab. He was an Arab because the civilization came out of the Arabian Peninsula into Mesopotamia. He was an Arab, and he traveled eastwards towards Sham. And again, this is his language, Arabic, Aramean, or a dialect of Arabic. And وَمَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِي. He was not a Jew, right? A Jew, the word Jew there's no religion called Judaism or a Jew in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, right? This is something that came in the 3rd century. So as we were saying that, the verse, وَمَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا. Right? So first of all, there was no Bani Israel. There was no Israelites. Because Bani Israel is Yaqub, right? Who is the grandson of Ibrahim alayhi salam through Ishaq. Right? And he is Israel, which means Abdullah, the slave of Allah. Right? And he had 12 sons, right? They are the Bani Israel. Right? There's no Jews or Judaism present in that time. So they are the Bani Israel, and they were the best of the nations in that time. And then in the time of Musa alayhi salam, they fell into worshipping the calf, but then they repented. They made tawbah. So here, as we see in the Quran, this is the meaning of the word Yahud, right? It means Ha'id, A'id, Hada Yahudo, which means to turn back, to repent, right? So here, this is a name that refers, which is a verb, an action, right? Those who repented from worshipping the calf and came back to the right way, right? So there is Yahud in that sense, with that meaning, right? This is a second category now. And then there's a third category, which is a tribe called Judah, Yehuda, Judah, right? This is now a tribe, right? So in the 6th century BC, when the kingdom of Israel and Judah, the fire worshippers came, the Magians, and they took the Judah as captive and took them into Babylon, right? Where the Jews remained for many centuries. Here, this is where the modern day, what we have as Judaism, this is a new religion. This is a new religion concocted by their learned people, right, in Babylon. And, then out of it came the Talmud and things like that. And then a new religion appeared based around race and land and, right? This is Judaism, what's called Judaism. Ibrahim does not know of any Judaism, right? Ibrahim didn't call himself a Jew, right? So this is a new religion. So therefore, when the Yahud make a claim to Ibrahim alayhi salam, this claim is empty. Ibrahim was a Muslim, Hanif, وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ, right? So, and likewise the Nazarenes, Nasrani means a helper, a Nazarene, Nasara meaning a helper of Jesus. Likewise, Ibrahim wasn't a Christian, alayhi salam. How could he be a Christian? Right? It's not possible. They came after him. But he was a Muslim, right? Singling out Allah in worship. And he was Hanif, وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. Right? He was not a polytheist. The Christians worship Isa alayhi salam, and they worship the cross. This is idolatry. This is shirk. Ibrahim wasn't a mushrik, right? And the Jews, the Yahud, the new religion they invented, basically makes the rabbis to be a manifestation of God, to them God, on this earth. They have a divine character, right? Right? Well, this is shirk. The difference between them is that the Christians, and in fact this is what these rabbis themselves say today, there's Jewish rabbis today, they say that the Christians took one Jew, because they believe Jesus was a Jew, but he wasn't. He was a Muslim, right? They took one Jew and they worshipped one Jew, the Christians. So they took one Jew and made him into a god and they worshipped that god, right? Then they say when the Messiah comes, when their Messiah comes, which is Dajjal to us, when he comes, then what will happen is that all the people of the earth will worship every Jew. Right? And they believe, as one of their scholars said, Maimonides, they call him Rambam, Maimonides, they quote him and they say, he said that Christianity really is it's like a training for the nations to worship one Jew, so that when their Messiah comes at the end of time, the reality will be uncovered that in reality, what you Christians do to one Jew and worship him is in fact the reality of every Jew. And then all the nations will want to worship a Jew in order to get to the Creator. Right? So this is the essence of shirk. This is the essence of idolatry and polytheism. Right? And then yet you claim to be monotheists. You claim to be people of Tawheed. Right? So on the one hand they say, well, the Christians are idolaters because they began to worship one Jew. And then on the other hand they say, well, actually, at the end of time when the Messiah comes, what the Christians did to Jesus is what all the nations are going to do to every Jew. Right? So these actual rabbis who actually say this, literally, explicitly, exactly as I'm saying it. Right? So all we can say to that is, what is this except the braying of a donkey who comprehends not the books which are on its back? You claim to be people of Tawheed, you claim you are monotheists, and yet, you're propounding the essence of shirk. This is the essence of idolatry and the essence of polytheism. On the one hand, you denounce the Christians, and then you call to the very same thing that you denounce the Christians for. Right? This is some from among the Yahud. It's not necessarily all of them, but there are among the Yahud who actually say and speak the likes of this, following some of their scholars of the past, such as Maimonides. Anyhow, coming back to the verse, وَمَا كَانَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ يَهُودِيًّا وَلَا نَصْرَانِيًّا وَلَكِنْ كَانَ حَنِيفًا مُسْلِمًا وَمَا كَانَ مِنَ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. So Ibrahim al-Islam was a Muslim. His religion was Islam, right? To single out the line worship. وقال أيضا, Ibrahim al-Islam also said, إذ قال له ربه أسلم قال أسلمت لرب العالمين. When his Lord said to him, Aslim, submit. قال أسلمت لرب العالمين. He said, I submit to the Lord of the worlds. ووصى بها إبراهيم بنيه ويعقوب يا بني إن الله اصطفى لكم الدين فلا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. So he said, when Ibrahim gave as a legacy, this thing is a legacy, meaning this Tawheed as a legacy, to his offspring and to Yaqub, saying, O my children, indeed Allah has chosen you, for you this religion, so do not die except while you are Muslim. So here he's telling Yaqub alayhi salam and his sons, his own sons, which is Ismail and Ishaq and his offspring, that you should not die except while you are Muslim. Right? So the word Muslim and the name Islam as the religion was known in that time. Likewise, Musa alayhi salam, he also said when he addressed his people, وَقَالَ مُوسَى يَا قَوْمِ إِن كُنْتُمْ آمَنْتُمْ بِاللَّهِ فَعَلَيْهِ تَوَكَّلُوا إِن كُنْتُمْ مُسْلِمِينَ. He said, O my people, if you truly believe in Allah, then upon you is to place your trust in him if indeed you are Muslimin, if you are Muslims. So he's Musa alayhi salam. Again, Musa alayhi salam spoke a dialect of Arabic. Aramaic, probably Aramean or something. He spoke a dialect of Arabic. And using the word Islam and Muslimin. And likewise, he said about the Torah, Inna anzalna at-Tawrat fiha hudan wa nur yahkumu biha an-nabiyyun alladhina aslamu lilladhina hadu. So speaking about the prophets, how the Torah was revealed, the prophets judged by way of this Torah, those who alladhina aslamu, those who submitted in Islam. Right? This was the way of all the prophets and the messengers. This is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, chapter 5, verse 44. And likewise, he said about the disciples of Jesus, of Isa alayhi salam, the Hawariyin. He said about them, وَإِذْ أَوْحَيْتُ إِلَى الْحَوَارِيِّينَ أَنْ آمِنُوا بِي وَرَسُولِي قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَاشْهَدْ بِأَنَّنَا مُسْلِمُونَ. When I inspired to the disciples, the helpers, the aiders, meaning of Jesus, that you should believe in me and my messenger, meaning my messenger Jesus. قالوا, they said, we believe and bear witness that we are Muslims. We are Muslims. Again, the word Muslims. And again, Jesus, peace be upon him, he spoke again a dialect of Arabic, which is Aramaic or Syriac. He didn't speak Greek and he didn't speak Latin, right? He spoke Aramaic or he spoke Syriac, which are Arabic dialects. And he used these words, Islam and Muslim, maybe with some variation between the sin and the sheen, Islam, Muslim, Shalom, like whatever, there's a slight difference or whatever. But all of it is effectively a dialect of Arabic. وَقَالَ أَنْ مَلِكَةْ السَّبَعِ. He also said about the queen of Sheba, the queen of Saba. رَبِّ إِنِّي ظَلَمْتُ نَفْسِي وَأَسْلَمْتُ مَعَ سُلَيْمَانَ لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. So she said, "O my Lord, I have wronged myself and I have submitted in Islam along with Solomon to Allah, the Lord of the worlds." Right, so the queen of Saba is in Yemen. Right, they're all speaking Arabic. This is all Arabic language, right, or a dialect of Arabic in that time. This is Arabic, right? And again, using the word Islam and Muslim and so on and so forth. It's all very, very clearly understood. Right, so everything that we've looked at so far from these verses, this Islam that is being referred to is al-Islam al-Am, right? It is Islam with a general meaning that we explained earlier. What is it? It is to worship only Allah alone and to do what He commanded and keep away from what He prohibited in accordance with whatever legislation or law is present at that time and hasn't yet been abrogated, right? This is the general Islam. And so all of the previous calls and messages of the prophets is Islam, and they were Muslim. And in fact, even if you go to, you will find even today, even if you go to the Hebrew and you get, you find these dictionaries online, and you can find where you can get the Hebrew text and the transliteration, and you can search and you'll find words like Mushalim and things, something like very similar to Muslim. You'll actually find it in the Bible in many places, right? So these words are actually present, but they have been either lost or eliminated by way of translation or rewriting or whatever it might be. But that notion, that idea of Islam and being a Muslim and a submission to Allah, that of it is actually present in the in those scriptures. Okay, so let's recap where we are. So we are speaking about ash-shara', the legislation, and after our discussion of al-qadr, what do we mean the legislation? It's very simple, right? It is whatever the message of every prophet and messenger was, right? It is obedience to Allah, worshipping only Him alone, doing what He commanded, keeping from what He prohibited. This is the general Islam that every prior prophet and messenger came with. However, Islam and the Sharia, the Shara here, actually takes on a very specific meaning. And this is because after the sending of the Prophet ﷺ, then all prior legislations and law and religions and books have been abrogated. And so therefore there is only one Islam, and that is Al-Islam Al-Khas. Al-Islam Al-Khas, the specific Islam. Right? So here, the Shaykh goes on to say from this point, وَأَمَّا الْإِسْلَامِ بِالْمَعْنَى الْخَاصِ فَيَخْتَصُ بِالشَّرِيعَةِ مُحَمَّدٍ صلى الله عليه وسلم. As for Islam in its specific sense, with its specific meaning, then it is unique and specific to the Sharia of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? He's going to bring a verse, but just to make it clear what this means, for example, you can't say, for example, well, I'm a Jew. I believe in Al-Qadr. I believe in the divine decree. And I also believe in the law, which is the Torah. Well, because this now is not Islam. This now is not the Shara, the legislation, because that's been abrogated. That's been abrogated. You can't actually say that. Nor can you say, well, I'm a Christian. I believe in the divine pre-decree. And my law is, well, obviously the law of Jesus, alayhi salam, he didn't come to change the law, he came to affirm the law, which is the Torah. Well, you can't say that either. Even though the Christians, they are murji'ah, they expel actions from Iman, and they believe in a belief-only salvation. So they are murji'ah, right? So they don't really believe in the law or the legislation in any case. But you couldn't say that, because this is not Islam, besides which Allah accepts no other religion. Right? So, Allah Ta'ala, He said in the Quran, قُلْ, say to the messenger, say, O messenger, قُلْ إِنَّ صَلَاتِي, say, indeed, my prayer, وَنُسُكِي, my sacrifice, وَمَحْيَايَ وَمَمَاتِي, and my life and my death, لِلَّهِ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, are all for Allah, the Lord of the worlds. لَا شَرِيكَ لَهُ, there is no partner to Him, وَبِذَلِكَ أُمِرْتُ, thus have I been commanded, وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, and I am the very first of the Muslims. I'm the first amongst the Muslims. And then He also said in another verse in the Quran, هُوَ سَمَّاكُمُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِ وَفِي هَذَا لِيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ شَهِيدًا عَلَيْكُمْ. And He is the one who named you Muslims before and in this, meaning in this book, so that the messenger can be a witness over you. Right? So these are verses from the Quran to show that the name likewise of this religion is also Islam. So the messenger Muhammad ﷺ didn't come with anything new. It is Islam, but it is Al-Islam Al-Khas. Now, if you notice, the messenger was commanded to say, وَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, I am the first of the Muslims, as occurs in Surah Al-An'am, chapter 6, verse 163, 6163. أَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ. How can the Prophet say, I'm the first of the Muslims, when we have just said that all the previous prophets and messengers were Muslims as well? How can this be? And the answer to that is that when the messenger is saying, أَنَا أَوَّلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ, meaning I am the first among the Muslims with the Islam which is khas, which is the specific Islam which has abrogated all of the previous religions. So therefore there is no prior Islam anymore, because it's all been abrogated, right? So therefore the first Muslim with the Islam khas is the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so the Shaykh says, فَلَا إِسْلَامَ بَعْدَ بَعْثَتِهِ إِلَّا بِاتِّبَاعِهِ لِأَنَّ دِينَهُ مُحِيمِنٌ عَلَى الْأَدْيَانِ كُلِّهَا ظَاهِرٌ عَلِيهَا. So there is no Islam after the sending of the messenger except through following him. And because his religion is a safeguard or a preservation or a muhaymin. Muhaymin means something that basically separates the truth from what is false, right? Muhaymin is like what Muhammad came with, sallam, of the Quran and the Sharia. It is a muhaymin, right? It confirms what is true in past scripture, and it refutes and exposes and invalidates what is false in previous scripture, right? Al-muhaymin. It is a safeguard or a preservation. So, because the religion of Muhammad sallam is a muhaymin over all past religions. And his sharia wa shari'atuhu nasikhatun lish-shara'i' as-sabiqa kulliha. And his legislation has invalidated or has abrogated all prior legislations. And there's a verse in the Quran, in Surah Ali Imran, chapter 3, verse 81, in which Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَإِذْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ النَّبِيِّينَ لَمَا آتَيْتُكُمْ مِنْ كِتَابٍ وَحِكْمَةٍ ثُمَّ جَاءَكُمْ رَسُولٌ مُصَدِّقٌ لِمَا مَعَكُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِهِ وَلَتُنْصَرُنَّهُ لَتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ وَلَتَنْصُرُنَّهُ قَالَ أَقْرَرْتُمْ وَأَخَذْتُمْ عَلَى ذَلِكُمْ إِسْرِي قَالُوا أَقْرَرْنَا قَالَ فَاشْهَدُوا وَأَنَا مَعَكُمْ مِنَ الشَّاهِدِينَ. So the meaning of the verse is that when Allah took the covenant of the prophets that I have given you of the book and the wisdom, that if I give you the book and the wisdom and then there comes to you a messenger, so while you are alive you have the book and the wisdom, and there comes to you a messenger who confirms that what is with you, then لَتُؤْمِنُنَّ بِهِ, you will surely believe in him and you will surely aid him. He said, so do you confirm and do you take this, this heavy covenant? They said, we confirm. Then he said, then bear witness, and I am with you of those who bear witness. So what this means is, all previous prophets and messengers, every prophet and messenger who came before, he knew of the sending of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because Allah made all previous prophets and messengers take a covenant that while you are alive, that there's going to be a messenger. And while you are alive, if there comes to you a messenger while you are alive, and he brings that which confirms that which you have with you of the message, of Tawheed and the law and whatever, then you enter into a covenant with me that you will believe in him and you will support him and you will aid him. So every prophet and messenger from Nuh alayhi salam to Isa alayhi salam, they all gave this, made this covenant, right? So this is a proof to show that when Prophet arrived and came, it means that all other previous prophets, messengers, their call, their law, the Sharia, the whatever, is all being abrogated, and they are all obligated to follow the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he mentioned that ayah, and he says, وَالَّذِي جَاءَ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَ الرَّسُولِ قَبْلَهُ هُوَ مُحَمَّدٌ sallallahu. So the one who then came with what confirms what was with the previous messengers is in fact Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he is the one who came, and that's why Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ الْكِتَابِ بِالْحَقِّ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ وَمُحَيْمِنًا عَلَيْهِ. And we have sent upon him the book in truth, confirming that which came before it of the book, and safeguarding, being a safeguard over it. And likewise he said, هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. He is the one who sent his messenger with guidance and the true religion in order to make it manifest over all other religions. Right? So these are verses from the Quran which establish the finality of the prophethood of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then also there's a hadith in which the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, by him in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, والذي نفس محمد بيده, by him in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, لا يسمع بي أحد من هذه الأمة, no one from this nation, meaning the nation of mankind, Yahudi ولا نصراني, be he a Jew or a Christian, he is of me, ثم يموت ولم يؤمن بالذي أرسلت به إلا كان من أهل النار. Who he is of me, but then he doesn't believe in what I was sent with, except that he will be from the inhabitants of the hellfire. So these texts from the Quran and from the Sunnah, they establish that there is an Islam which is khas, which is specific, and this is the Islam brought by Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this is what we mean by ash-shara', al-qadar wa shara', the divine decree and the divine law, right? It can only be what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam came with, because everything else has been abrogated and has been invalidated by the sending of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Shaykh goes on to mention an issue here where he says that, so this shows really that when we ask the question, were the people of previous nations, were they Muslim or were they not Muslim? Right? This really becomes a matter of wording. It's a dispute about wording. We already established that the word general Islam, al-Islam al-Am, this applies to every previous Sharia, every previous law. It includes Islam and all previous nations who were following a prophet in their time, right? So long as their Sharia had not been abrogated, right? So Islam applies to all of those people. They were Muslims with a general label of Islam. However, after the sending of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then Islam now, the word Islam now is specific and unique only to what he brought. So whoever does not believe in him and follow him, then he is not a Muslim. He cannot be a Muslim. ومن زعم أن مع دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم دينا سواه قائما مقبولا عند الله تعالى من دين اليهود أو النصارى أو غيرهما فهو مكذب لقول الله تعالى. So whoever claims now that there is alongside the religion of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم some other religion which is acceptable to Allah, of Yahudiya or Nasraniya or other than them, then he is denying the statement of Allah, inna ad-deena inda Allahi al-Islam. Indeed, the religion with Allah is Islam. وَمَنْ يَبْتَغِي غَيْرَ الْإِسْلَامِ دِينًا فَلَنْ يُقْبَلَ مِنْهُ وَهُوَ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنَ الْخَاسِرِينَ. Whoever seeks a religion other than Islam, never will it be accepted from him, and in the hereafter he will be of the losers. Both these verses are in Surah Ali Imran. So this now, at this point, what we've established now then, basically, that there is a general Islam which no longer exists, which the previous prophets and messengers were upon. It has been superseded and abrogated by the specific Islam and the universal prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is what we mean by ash-shara', the legislation, the law, and this is what is acceptable to Allah, and this is what goes together with al-qadar wa shara', al-qadar wa shara'. Right? It is only the religion of Islam and the Sharia which is the final law. Now there's an interesting discussion. We'll finish on this point, inshallah. The Shaykh raises an issue about. He mentions an issue about Waraqa bin Nawfal, right? Waraqa was a Christian priest prior to the coming of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he knew from the gospel and the Torah, that there's going to be a prophet that is going to come from the Arabs, and he knew the name and he knew the descriptions and in this prophet. However, he said, if this prophet reaches my time, then I will aid him and I will support him. Right? So he was a believer in him even before the Prophet ﷺ actually came. So there's a question now, can we say about him that he was a believer in the Prophet ﷺ before the Prophet ﷺ even came? And the answer is no, because he believed in the prophethood before the Prophet ﷺ was actually made a prophet and a messenger. Right? And it is also a matter of consensus that the very first person to become a Muslim and believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Khadija radiallahu anhu, his wife, from the women, and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu from the men. So Waraqa was not the first believer, right? Even though he had knowledge that there's going to be a prophet, and he didn't actually manage to believe after the Prophet announced his prophethood. So now this leads to another discussion, which is, what about those people? What about those people who were not able to believe in the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? Because his prophethood didn't reach them, or whatever. And we know that in Islam the ruling is that such people to whom the message has not reached, they will be tested in the hereafter. Right? They will be put to test in the hereafter. Right? So even today there might be people who either have never heard of Islam, never heard of the Prophet ﷺ, never heard of the Quran. Right? So such people will be put to trial in the hereafter. There will be a sharia, a command or a prohibition or something. They will be given that in the hereafter. And whether they will enter paradise or not will be determined on whether they obey or not. Right? So he says, yes, those who the da'wah has not reached in this world, then their affair is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the hereafter. He says they could be excused because the Shaykh says, وَقَدْ يُؤْذَرُونَ لِأَنَّهُمْ يَقْتَدُونَ بِعُلَمَائِهِمْ. They could be excused because they are simply following their scholars and the truth hasn't come to them. The proof hasn't been established upon them. وَقَدْ لَا يُؤْذَرُونَ. Sometimes maybe they might not be excused. But what is obligatory upon them is to seek and to follow and to seek knowledge and to look and to investigate. But the knowledge of that is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what the outcome will be in the hereafter. So this we can inshallah end with on that note. Just one little final point, but we'll cover it in the next lesson inshallah ta'ala. So just to conclude and wrap up today's lesson, and basically we are following on from the previous lesson regarding Al-Qadr. We established that what Al-Qadr is that we ought to believe in, and how we cannot be from the groups and the sects that deviated, whether the Majusiyah, whether the Mushrikiyah, whether the Iblisiyah. We are upon the truth as it relates to Al-Qadr. Similarly, when it comes to Ash-Shar', the legislation, then what do we mean by this legislation? Which legislation? Is it the Torah of the Jews? Is it the Injil of the Christians? Is it what is it? That goes hand in hand with Al-Qadr. It is only the Sharia, the final revelation, the Quran, the Sunnah, what the Messenger of Allah came with. And this is the Islam al-Khas. This is what we mean. And this, inshallah, will be expanded further in the next lesson. Right? So now we have an understanding that this is the specific Islam that the Messenger Muhammad came with. We've established that now with evidences from the Quran, from the Sunnah. This is what it is. The next lesson we want to explain further what exactly is this specific Islam, right? And this is where we will look at Tawheed. What is Tawheed in detail, right? This is what is acceptable to Allah. And this is the foundation of that religion which is acceptable to Allah. So we'll look at that inshallah ta'ala in the next lesson. We'll conclude here at this point. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.